evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Michigan City Sanitation Board meeting, Wednesday, June the 24th. I'd like to say welcome to the board meeting. I'd like to call to order the meeting. Roll call. If you guys could mention your name and say that you're here, because I can't see who's here. Starting with Hope, could you?
Yes, Hope is here.
Okay.
Mr. Smith is here.
Okay.
Mr. President.
Thank you. Is that the three board members?
Yeah, Frank Harris said that he could not attend the meeting today. Actually, he's got some medical stuff. He's at the doctor's, but he couldn't be here today. But and I don't know if Jeff's going to get on or not.
Okay. Well, we do have enough for quorum, so I'd like to call the meeting to order and your approval on the minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes. Tim Smith. I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
No opposed. Public comment, or do you want to wait a little while?
No, I think it's fine. No, it's fine.
Okay. Public comment, will there be any public comment?
Is there anyone from the public that wants to make any comments? Anyone from the public that wants to make any comments?
Don't look like no one's there. Right.
Okay.
Well, we're going to move on to safety. Mr. McCoy, you have the floor here.
Good afternoon. In the month of May, we did not have any recordable injury. However, in June, we've had two recordable. Both of them are people operating the truck, the composite truck, and the loader and the driver. One was injured on the 17th, and that was the loader who had joint conference. Picked up a hanger draft. 6:18, the driver was stepping out of the truck using 3 points of contact to get out of the truck, and his foot slipped off of the step, and he twisted. Both are on restricted work activity, and in fact, the driver was injured, is assisting me in developing job safety, job analyses for the refuge department loader for both refuse, trash, and compost, in addition to developing the JHA driver. So they look pretty good. So it's a big help on that, and we hope to get that out and provide this information to everyone who is in the department, and that'll be reviewed periodically. One thing when you ask me to do, and I'll probably report on it in more detail next month, is to take a look at some issues around compost and yard waste. And I wrote with the veterans foreman one morning around the different compost routes, and it was an eye experience. And so what we're going to do, we're developing an information sheet and requesting assistance from the public on the proper way to prepare their grass pickup for pickup by the refuse department. What I noticed while I was out on tour, that many of the containers are containers that are above the 32-gallon requirement. Many of them are the 45-gallon size, or a little bit larger in some cases. and there's just much too much to ask a person to lift, or even two people to lift, to get it up into the back of the container. So we have a number of bits of information that we're going to share with the public, and really asking for their assistance in trying to injury. And we'll probably come up with some recommendations on the types of containers that we've observed that really are the best containers to set out the compost and yard waste. So we'll get that out here in within the next couple weeks here, after it's been reviewed carefully by Mr. Stanford and Mr. Cuss and some of the other folks in the refuse department. Alrighty, so the other activities that I've listed on my monthly report sheet with the COVID-19 pandemic and some safety measures that we have implemented, making sure those safety being followed, answering questions again related to related to the pandemic and our return back to something close to normal activity. And so that's basically what I've covered during the month of May, and I'll close saying that a real big support to board members that had questions and are providing assistance along the way on our injury prevention programs. So, any questions?
Yeah, this is Holt. I have one. In going from, and I'm completely in agreement with going to the smaller, more manageable cans to be picked up.
Yeah.
Have Michael, and maybe you can chime in. I would presume that several people have probably been using bigger ones for many, many years. I mean, many years. And now that we're not doing it, we still have not notified the public that we are going to expect them to be using smaller cans.
No, that's...
Yeah, we've gotten some information out there in the past, but apparently it's not being adhered to, or not being followed, or not understood. I had some pleasant conversations with residents while out on tour, and very pleasant conversations. And one individual had a container that was the right size, but the person was also filling a container that was somewhat larger that they were going to set out for pickup. And so we had a discussion about injury prevention and things like that, and they simply didn't realize that there was a limitation on size. And then in another case, an individual was setting out a 45-gallon container full of brush and grass. And so we had a similar conversation, very positive, and he wasn't aware of that either. And so the foreman said, we'll pick up this one right here, that you need to go and get the right size container so we can pick it up next week. So, I'm hoping that with communication with the public, it will really open some eyes, provide some excellent information. But as we all know, and it may be necessary to have a city ordinance for those that need further encouragement to follow the requirements.
Hey, Holt, I just want to make sure that you understand. We did issue a press release about the yard waste and the proper size containers to pick up, and I believe that's been done in the past also, and so the people should all know the proper size containers.
There's going to be press release. Okay.
Yeah, we issued a press release, and it's on our website too. So.
Okay.
And this was before Dan did any of his, as he's calling it, going on tour, before he went on yard waste compost tour. We issued that before that time. I think what may have been happening is that one of the refuse workers who's been with us for a long time is off right now, and that person every year was on the compost truck and would always volunteer for that job. Some people don't like it because it's maybe a little harder work. That person was on that truck all the time for years, and I have a feeling that with that person on the truck, they were just picking up the larger cans instead of like trying to do what Dan did, talk to the homeowners, talk to the residents, or maybe put some notes. We have these stickers that we could put on the cans to say, that this is the wrong size. So I think that might be why it's becoming a little more of an issue now. But actually, since Dan went on his tour, I really haven't really had any calls or any complaints since then. So I think the word's getting out there a little better.
Okay, what date was that tour?
It was June 4th.
June 4th, okay.
Hey, I got another question, Mike. Those cans you're talking about, are those for like shrubbery, grass, and different things of that nature, or are they allowed to be in the cans as well? Or?
Yeah, that's what they're for. They're for the grass clippings and sticks and leaves and things like that we pick up during the compost season from like May through November. And then we take it to the compost area down in Westville.
Okay, that's going to be a different can that you have.
Yeah, it has to be a different can than your refuse container. Your refuse container is just for refuse.
Okay, I just wanted to,
And then since we don't have the lifters for you have the toters for your refuse, they have lifters on those trucks that lift those up. We don't have those on the grass truck, and that's one of the reasons why it needs to be a smaller container. Plus, I think the grass and stuff might stick in there a little more too. I don't know how well the lifters will work, although that is another thing that Dan is evaluating.
Okay. All good points. I have another question too, Dan. How has there been any cases of COVID in the department?
No.
Not from college.
No, we haven't had any knowledge. We don't have no knowledge of anyone in the sanitary district having the COVID virus, and we have also done as you know, from the very beginning, a really diligent job. We took the lead on, working off-site and various things like that. So.
Yeah, everyone's doing a good job. Real proud.
But knock on wood, we can't let our guard down either.
That's right. So, that's one thing we'll be sure to emphasize is that as we move back into something that resembles normal, that will lower our guard, so to speak, and will not be following some of the precautions we should take. And we're all human beings. I'm guilty of that as well. Sometimes I find myself not wearing a mask when I should, and really that's not a good thing. So we all need to do our parts and continue to keep our guard up so that we don't become infected.
Are there any other questions for Dan McCoy?
No, Mike. The next thing is the financial report.
No, the next thing is the opening of quotes and bids, which we don't have any this month. And then the next thing after that was the COVID health emergency update for district functions.
Okay. Sorry.
In your packet, there is an updated plan, safeguards for a COVID-19 plan. Basically, this revision was put together to have a plan for how we're going to open the office back up to the public. In summary, we plan to open the office back up to the public starting Tuesday, July 7th, 2020. There's some talk about starting on July 6th, on Monday, July 6th, but I wanted to wait one more day till after the 4th of July holiday weekend to make sure that we're ready. and the plan was in your packet and or on the shared file, and we have everything that we changed highlighted in yellow so you could see any of the changes. The biggest thing that I talked about was opening, and then we are going to have a public access announcement that we put on our front door, and it's already on there, that the offices will be opening up the 7th. The doors will still be locked. There'll be a doorbell for the people to ring the doorbell, which is already there for people to ring the doorbell. And then after that, we will do this health screening notice and procedure for visitors. We made a checklist out of this. Basically, we're going to take their temperature. We have some handheld devices that can take your temperature from your thermometer. It's using a touchless thermometer. You have to hold it a few inches away from someone's forehead, and you press a button and it reads their temperature. And if your temperature is over 104 degrees or thereabouts, we're going to not allow you to access to the facility. Seems like the meter, we're not exactly sure how accurate it reads, so we may lower that threshold down a little bit. Today, for instance, I checked it myself and I was like 97.1 degrees, and of course I should be 98.9. So that's a little lower than, so we might lower that threshold down a little bit. I also want to know if you've been in contact with anybody within the last 14 days that is known to have the COVID virus, and then if you've traveled from any one of this list of cities that we have on the list, Indianapolis, Cass County, Indiana, New York, New Jersey, Massachusetts, Washington State, Florida, Colorado, Detroit, New Orleans, or Albany, or if you've come from abroad, we may not let you into the facility. One question was asked of us today, why Chicago's not on the list, and there was 2 reasons for that. The rate in Chicago seems to be declining, and also it's just so close. There's going to be, maybe a lot of people who've traveled to Chicago. So we're going to use our best judgment on that. And then if you have a cough or shortness of breath or any of these other symptoms, we may not allow you in. So we had some visitors today, not necessarily public visitors, but they were some vendors that were looking at purchasing a turbidity meter for the wastewater treatment facility, and also they were talking to us about some power correction unit that helps out with our electricity, and we filled this form out with them today and followed these procedures, and it seemed to work very well, and we're going to keep a record of this. So are there any questions about the safeguard plan? Now, if you have any, you feel free to reach out to me or go there. So now we're on to the financial report, Gary.
Okay, Scott, is Scott on the phone?
Yes, I am.
Okay, great.
Okay. Hey, first of all, I didn't send it via email because I believe you received Michael's information. So if you didn't, I'll send it to you tomorrow. Does anybody want me to send it to you tomorrow?
I think they all got everything, Scott. They should have got it.
Okay. All right, I'll begin by reading the May 31st cash balances. The operating fund had $846,469.76. The municipal account was actually a negative balance of $687.89. Improvement fund was $842,895.03. Vehicle replacement was $56,735.48. And the equipment replacement fund had a balance of $620,053.46 for a total net bank account of $2,365,465.84. The Indian Springs project had $13,280.49, and the Whippoorwill project had $635.40 for a total net bank account of $13,915.89. The SRF debt reserve had a balance of $499,406.99, and the SRF bond and interest at $171,151.73 for a total
total balance of BNY none of $670,558.72. Stormwater at $453,186.84. The municipal refuse account had $731.74, and the refuse tax levy account had $453,947.28. The special revenue fund had $13,546.34. The tax levy grant fund had $8,522.14, and the tax levy grant fund had $518,146.71. The rainy day fund had zero, for a total in that bank account of $411,787.63. The Carwick remediation account had $387,765.09, for a total cash balance of $3,849,493.17.
Hey, Scott.
And then
Scott.
Yeah, go ahead.
When you read the grant levy fund, I don't think you indicated that was a negative balance.
Oh, it's a negative.
Yeah, so could you read the grant levy fund amount again one more time, please?
Yeah, it's a negative $518,146.71.
Okay.
So that, I included a second sheet, and these are the balances of yesterday. Mm-hmm. It says today, but there's been some extra deposits made today, so some of these numbers have gone up. But as you can see, the operating fund had an improvement of $389,737.66. Mm-hmm. And then the other thing that happened in the month was we actually got the spring tax settlement. We got roughly 80% of what we were expecting, which is about 43% of the year total. So it actually came in a little better than I was expecting. And the other point on that is people had until July 15th to pay the property taxes for the spring. So the 20%, I'm thinking we're going to get at least half of that in the future. So it was actually pretty good. And then the other thing, on the tax levy grant fund, we actually got one of a reimbursement from redevelopment since May 31st. And we also have some money coming from the Delta Institute related to some grants. And they sent me the check numbers and amount. And that balance will become slightly positive. So that negative balance is going away, hopefully by the end of June. So as you can see, our cash went up $1.3 million in the month of June, and that's so far. Now we'll still collect. We've collected roughly 90% of the utility bills when you compare it to last June. So, I think we're doing a lot better than I think we really anticipated. So, at the last meeting, Holt had asked about, a worst case scenario. We're putting stuff together on the refuse and collections department right now, because Michael will probably discuss this later. We're looking to hire maybe a couple people. I think financially we'll be able to do that. But I'm putting some analysis together which I'll share with the board once it's completed.
Yeah, I didn't. This is Tim. One quick question. In that analysis, could you just put in there in case there's a second round this fall of COVID and what that might do? I mean, we've successfully hopefully through this first one, but there are projections out there and predictions that we're going to run into a second one. So because it could affect the property. The other thing which we received yesterday was there's something called a shared win tax. It's a wagering tax. And
get a percentage of what the city gets. The city keeps 75% in the general fund and then allocates 25% of what they receive. On that one, we were expecting roughly 116,000. We only got 68,000 because the blue chip, that represents December, January, February, and half of March. So we only got about 60% of that. But in that, we apply that to the refuse fund. So, but fortunately, it's kind of a smaller percentage of the refuse budget. So, depending on blue chip, we're probably going to get another 50 or 60% in December. We get that payment in June and December. So, so I'll redo the cash flow for the rest of the year. And, to Holt's point, maybe I'll only put 50% of the property taxes in there. And we'll still have cash, so.
Yeah, that would be helpful. I think Holt's on point with that. So thank you.
Yeah, I kind of was waiting to see what June looked like before I did it, to have a better starting point. But it looks like, the cash balances will be okay through the end of December, even kind of in that worst case scenario. So I hope that helps. Does anybody else have any questions on that? Okay. And then I also included the budget performance reports for the operating and refuse and stormwater. And we're doing very well against budget through May 31st. All the ratios look pretty good. There's a few items that we may be a little over, but there's quite a few that we've really contained the expenses pretty well. So I don't know if anybody has any questions on any of those. Okay, and then the last thing I had was we're having SEH do this asset inventory, help us put in the asset module of our new software. And with the COVID, we thought we'd have this project done by the end of June, but it's doing it remotely has been difficult. So we extended the contract through December 31st. So,
and there's
the only thing that's changed from previous things that you guys have seen.
There's no cost adjustment, just an extension of time. And
no, any cost adjustments they would have seen before,
right.
Like the original contract.
So I guess
anything we had done previously.
We need to have approval of this change to this contract by the board, extending the time for completion of the asset management.
Okay, can we get a motion? I'll make the motion. Tim Smith. I'll second that with it. All in favor? Aye. Aye, no opposed.
Okay, that's all I have unless anybody has any questions.
No, that was good job.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kistler.
Okay, we're going to go with the updates in the project, but we covered.
No, we're on item 9, street department assisting refuse with household piles.
Okay, I see.
Before I go on, Mr. Jeff Wright, are you on the line? Jeff Wright, did you call in? Okay, I guess I thought I heard someone else call in. I thought maybe it was him. Okay, I issued this memo to Mr. Mitchell on June 19th, 2020. I had talked to him earlier about this before I did the memo to get his verbal approval. Basically, we started keeping track of our trash household/trash piles in a much more systematic way last August when we were getting behind. And To date, we've got 3,117 entries on the list, and I want to point out that does not include anything that was put out during spring cleanup. For the 5 weeks or 6 weeks of spring cleanup, we do not put anything on this household list. So that's quite a number of items, as you can see. We were doing really well. We had an average of 2.8 days. However, more recently, the list grew to over 200 households on the list, and we've gotten up to around 12 days. Mayor asked me if I would accept some help from the street department, and there was a little cost differential for the street department because of their contract with the city that they were working out of rank. Came to $1.97 an hour for the drivers and 48 cents an hour for the heavy equipment operators. And they were using a maximum of 6 people per week, which came to a total difference of $511.20 for a 40-hour week. I talked to the street department superintendent today, and through email, and he said that they are not helping us any longer, that the last day they helped us was yesterday, and several of these days, I think almost all the days that they did help, they only used 3 people instead of 6 people. So Mr. Attorney Meyer said that in order to pay this extra pay to the street department for helping us, that we needed board approval, and so that's why I wrote this memo, and I'm requesting board approval to pay the differential to the street department for helping us pick up the household trash piles.
Well, can we I'll make that motion.
Can we get a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. No opposed.
Thanks for the memo, Michael.
You're very welcome, sir. The next one.
Thank you, Michael.
You're very welcome, thank you. The next memo that I wrote deals with the dump trailers for hauling the sludge, and also, like I said, we could take the refuse, street sweepings and grit and stuff to the landfill using these the semi-truck that we purchased with your approval at the last meeting. And I had looked around at prices for dump trailers, and when I came to the last meeting, I thought we could find something for $20,000. I began looking in more earnest after the board meeting, and I was really starting to panic a little bit because I really couldn't find anything that was under $20,000. I found one, but it was like all smashed up in an accident, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to have to look harder at this. So I called up Andy Mechanic because Andy has a lot of experience with farming and stuff like that, if you don't know that. And he says, oh, you ought to get involved with this Ritchie Brothers auction. So we talked, and I did some research, and I was like, wow, there's some pretty nice trailers here. I also got some advice from Mr. Meyer, because he's also has a lot of background from working on the farm. And turned out there were a couple trailers that were really low priced, and we decided to purchase 2 of them for a total of $11,745.63. Which is nearly 50% below the initial approval of $20,000 for one trailer. Andy did some considerable amount of research, and he estimates at an absolute minimum that we saved about $17,000 on these 2 trailers. And I also want to point out that it's always nice to have a second unit. I know Mr. Wright's not on the call right now, but he had a saying that he said at one of our meetings that 2 is 1 and 1 is none, and sometimes that's a very true saying, because if you have one thing and it breaks, you have nothing. So I think this is a good idea, and it was a good purchase by us. We could also be loading up one of them at the belt press while the other one's hauling, or we could, if we can find a second semi-cab for a really good price like we found the first one, we might be able to, haul 2 of these at one time. So, and if one of them breaks down, then we still have one. So anyways, I just share this with you and ask for your, approval with the purchase of the 2 trailers.
Could we have a motion?
Do we actually need a motion to
Just joined the conference.
Previous meeting?
I don't know, Mr. Meyer,
You should vote, this is Jim, you should vote to approve these purchases. You approved going out and spending, but you didn't, there was a dollar amount, et cetera. So these are the actual ones that were bought, and I therefore think it would be a good idea to have in the record that you approved the purchase of them.
Okay, I'll make that motion, Ms. Holt. And Tim Smith will second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
No opposed.
Jeff,
I believe
Jeff,
was Jeff.
Yeah, Jeff just entered the meeting here. Excuse my tardiness.
I just used your famous line, Jeff, where 2 is 1 and 1 is none, so. And I agree with that, so I was just talking about the 2 trailers, so. The next thing that's in your packet is the letter that I sent to Mr. Metros for the our contract that we have for the municipal solid waste disposal. And I was just asking them if they are willing to hold their price like they have for the last couple of years, that we would be willing to enter into a 1-year extension if they're willing to hold the price. And if not, then we'll have to send this out for bids. And I just wanted you board members to have a copy of this letter and be aware of it. Are there any questions about this?
No response, correct?
No, he wrote me back that something along the lines of that they really appreciate the relationship and working with the Michigan City, and that he was going to take it up to his general manager and to see if they could, if it was doable to keep the price the same. So.
Thank you.
Sounds good, Mike.
Want me to just keep going on, Gary?
Yeah, go ahead. We go with the updates of the
Okay,
project.
updates to the project. You have your update to the Cheney Run project. IAD&R recommended modifications to the cross veins. Erosion control practices are in place and being monitored. The paved berm is 100% complete, and some of the shrub plantings are complete. Micro pools are scheduled for completion in June, and so forth. So I don't know if there's any questions on the update. Any questions on the update to the project? I think it would be good for, it's really working very well so far. I mean, it's really not even done yet, but the times that we've had some rain, it's just working as designed, and seems to be doing a really nice job of capturing and treating the water. So maybe someday soon, maybe July or August, we could take a walk out there and take a look at it. We might have to do it in stages with the board members, because I think if all of you are together, it might be considered a public meeting, but we can work with Mr. Meyer on those types of things.
Man, I like that.
We have a pay request number 4 from HRP. Again, we like to go over some of these bigger items with you during the meeting. They are on the docket, but we have a pay request for $47,094.30 from HRP, and this has been reviewed by the engineer, Ted Blanick, and he says it's approvable, and I've also looked at it along with Mr. Stanford, and we would like the board to approve this payment request number 4 to HRP.
Can we get a motion?
I'll make the motion to pay for the pay request for HRP.
Could we have a second? Jeff will second it. All in favor?
Aye.
No opposed.
Okay, then on that same project, we have the pay request from V3 that was for their construction engineering work, construction monitoring work, and that's a total of $8,346.59. It's been reviewed by Mr. Stanford and myself, and we've signed off on the verification of services form, and I would ask that this be approved by the board.
Could we get a motion?
I'll make that motion. Hold.
Jeff will second. All in favor? Aye. No opposed.
on site every day?
No, not every day. I don't think they're on site every day. We'd have to look at their invoice here to see how many days they're on site and what they're doing.
Okay, I just wondering if they were there all day, every day, or is it one day? Oh, I see here the hours are a couple of hours each day, every other day.
Okay?
That's all.
Okay.
Yeah.
The next thing that's in your packet is we had the contract with Cardinal to plant the trees and shrubs for the barrier between the GAF. It's on the far west side of this project, and the total cost for that contract was $9,945, and that has all been purchased and installed and verified by myself and Mr. John Gorsica, who's out there while they were doing the planting. So I'd ask that we get the approval for Cardinal for $9,945.
Could we get a motion? Could we get a motion to approve? Could we have a second?
I'll second. Tim Smith.
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Aye. 4.
Are you still with us, Holt?
Yes, I am.
Oh, okay, 'cause I didn't hear you say anything there for a little time. Okay, the next thing that's on the agenda is for Cheney Run is a change order number 2. I'm requesting approval of this change order in the amount of $14,395 to extend the vegetated berm 15 feet to the west hill. The GAF property drops off rather sharply, really sharply with the hill. City engineer Jeff Wright asked me a question about this. He wanted to know why the berm needed to be extended. I did some follow-up on that, and they did the survey points, and basically I guess they take all that data that they gather and they put it into some software, and it draws out the topo map. Well, since they didn't have the surveys points were not tight enough, it showed the berm, the hill from GAF extending further out by about 15 feet, and that is why when they got on site to do the work that the hill needed to be extended about 15 feet. And then also the floodplain forest and seed mix needed to add additional 3.74 acres. This was basically an oversight on the bid tab form by the engineer and also by myself and also by Mr. Sanford, and we all missed it. Should have been 3.99 acres as required by the IDNR and the IDEM. And then also the cross veins needed to be modified by adding some larger stone, greater size as pretty much required by the DNR request for modification. Prior to approving change order number 1, the project total cost was $973,640. Change order number 1 in the amount of $96,140 was approved, raising the total contract construction project cost to $1,069,780. However, since the time of change order number 1 was approved, the total construction cost has been reduced by about $24,000. That's because the security fencing and the trees and shrubs, we were able to get those contracts in place for less than we had anticipated, for about $24,000 less. So therefore, adding this $14,395 for change order number 2 will still be below the previously approved total of by about $10,050. I recommend the board approval because these changes are necessary to the project, absolute musts, and the cost will keep the total project below our most recent approval. And also, the district cash match that we will need is currently $32,893, which remains below the expected $40,000 grant reimbursement that we received for the Cheney Run design services that were also discussed at the board meeting in March. So I would ask that the board approve change order number 2 for the Cheney Run project in the total amount of $14,395.
Could we get a motion?
I'll make the motion to approve change order number 2 on the Cheney Run, so. I guess for a total of, what was it, Mike?
$14,395.
$14,395. Oh, there it is, thank you.
Okay, can we get a second?
So this is Jeff, and I don't have any problem with the change order. I was just wondering who was the surveyor that created the model for the hill and the slopes and the berms. Was that V3 or was that a subcontract? You know?
Steve Stafford?
Yeah, you're talking about Cheney, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, V3 drew all that stuff up, all the design work on it.
And they did the survey too?
I think they started with the Weaver survey and then they did supplemental surveying when they thought they needed it.
Because at one point, Jeff, we had done an Alta survey with Weaver Consultants had done an Alta survey. So it was either Weaver or V3 or a combination of.
I know that doesn't change my opinion on the change order. I mean, we still have to do it, and I don't think we're getting anything, well, I think we're paying him more, had it been right in the drawings to start with, we'd have paid $14,395 additional anyway. So I guess I don't have any issues with the change order, so I would second the motion to approve it.
All in favor?
Aye.
No opposed.
And Jeff, just to make sure, I know you guys already approved it, it wasn't $14,000 to make the berm, it was $14,000 total for the 3 different things, okay?
Yeah, I understand.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. Okay, Carwick dump site, there's an update in your packet. I'll try to read it quickly. Vast majority of the construction work at Carwick has been completed. Site visit was recently performed to develop final completion punch list. Those items include minor erosion control, and we're having a little bit of an issue with the shore socks. Remember I told you we were like the first ones to ever use it here that we know of. And what we're finding is on the steep slopes, I don't know if it was the way that was installed or just nature of the beast with this material, but it doesn't seem to be adhering really tightly to the dirt. There's like a gap between what's below it. I don't know, Steve Stafford, what would you say? Maybe even a 3 to 4 inch gap in some places between the dirt and the height of the shore socks? And when you push, if you stand out there and you take your hand or your foot and you push the shore socks down to the ground, the grass will poke right through it. But once you let off the pressure, then it's kind of taut and tight, and then the grass isn't really getting through that well. So what we've asked is for the shore socks to be staked down with stakes to allow the grass to grow through there better. And that's the second bullet item. And then the trees and shrubs have all been planted out there also, and they seem to be doing quite well. There's a few of the trees that maybe aren't going to make it, not very many. They'll be replaced as part of the contract, but overall it seems to be going very well. Are there any questions about the Carwick dump site project?
Michael, if you like, I can fill you in based on my visit today.
Does the board want Steve to update us? Sure, Steve, go ahead.
Sure. Bullet item 1 is finished. Bullet item 2 is half done as of today. And Flucker's been watering the trees at least once a week when they don't get sufficient rain.
Okay.
All righty.
The Cheney Run / Carwick amenity study That seems to be going along pretty well. They've talked to DNR about some permitting. They've had some correspondence with the sanitary district and the redevelopment about requirements such as if they put up a sign, what's the requirements for a sign. They've identified ordinance and questions, developed alternatives for cross trails and handling drainage needs, and they've delivered a preliminary design summary memo. This was as of the period of June 1st through June 12th. So, are there any questions on the amenities study?
No.
Okay, the Southgate Neighborhood Stormwater Improvement Project is basically Crestwood Drive's been paved and restored, the roadway crown. There was an issue when they first paved Crestwood Drive. It wasn't draining to the actual stormwater inlet drain. That has been fixed. Got to give Johnny Gorsica some credit on that. He noticed the problem and basically was really steadfast and said there's no way that we're going to allow this. And they wanted us to pay extra money to fix this mistake, and Johnny said, no way, we're not paying any extra money. This was supposed to be done right in the first place, and it needs to be fixed. So I just want to compliment him on that. He did a nice job on that, and that has been fixed. The rear yard easement sewers, if you remember, I think it's Crestwood and Ohio Street, the rear yards back there, we're having a lot of flooding issues. That storm sewer has all been installed, and the contractor is working on lawn restoration in that area. Needs to finish grading of the swales. They submitted pay application number 4, which we'll get to in a minute. Substantial milestone work was May 15th, and the final completion date for the work was June 15th. The contractor intends to submit a request for additional days due to rain delays. So we don't have that yet. The contractor has not sent us any type of a request for a change order to the contract to allow for extra days. But I guess that he's planning to do so soon, and I would personally recommend approval of it when we get it with no cost for more time, because it was some issues with the rain. And then we have the certificate for partial utilization. There were some concerns with the way that the form was filled out, and I sent that to Mr. Meyer, and he offered some suggestions, and they're saying that they sent this to me on June 10th, but I don't really know that we received the revised version. If we did, we'll have to get that looked at, and I'll sign off on it and bring it to the next board meeting. The biggest issue we've got right now with this project is in that rear yard drainage area. The contract called for sod, and the contractor placed seed instead of sod. It's kind of a double-edged sword. We really probably rather have the sod, but this time of year is not really the best time to really plant sod and try to get it established, although you can do that if you keep it watered very well. So we've asked for a 75% reduction in the cost of the difference between sod and seed, because of that's some information that we found from other contracts and so forth, that's about the difference in price. The contractor is still arguing that with us. We talked about it at length today. And then also the rear yard easements. You gentlemen may remember that almost all the homes in that area were vastly encroaching on our easement back there for our storm sewer line that we have back there and for this drainage area. And we had originally agreed we were going to put all the fences and back and everything to where they were, but after we're looking at this project now, it's something that we might want to think about a little more closely. So it'll be hard for us to maintain, very difficult for us to maintain this product that we're putting in. And it's also something that I've reached out to the mayor's office verbally, and I plan to put together some type of I want to analyze it a little more closely, and I may put together a memo if we don't want to put the fences back and where they were in the first place. So just something to keep in mind. We have this pay request number 4, which takes into account the 75% reduction for the seeding compared to the sod. Just to get specific with you, if you look at, it says page 4 of the pay request. At the top, it says page 4. Periodic pay estimate number. Oh, that's 4. It's not page 4. It's actually, I sent you this earlier today, but they're reducing the total amount by $11,236.58 for the, it's 88 cents for the sod compared to the seed. I think we should go ahead, recommend that we go ahead and pay this. We've got a letter from the engineer. I would recommend that we pay this invoice now and that we work out any adjustments for the future on the sod or the seeding. So if I could get a motion, or if we could get approval of, I guess it's payment recommendation number 4, or what is it, pay request number 4 by D&M in the total amount of $117,306.34, and a reminder that this is reimbursed by the Redevelopment Commission.
So we have a motion.
Well, I guess I'm sorry, Mike, I'm kind of lost on which, I'm looking at D&M pay request and it's noted 12DI. Is that the one you're talking about?
If you're on the shared file, I put a revised one in there today, just before the meeting, as we had our meeting with the engineers, progress meeting today at 2 o'clock. So I put it in there, I don't know, I want to say around 3 o'clock. And I also emailed it, I think I emailed it to everybody also.
That's 12DI revised pay act number 4.
That's it, right there.
Okay, I'm tracking. The only thing I noticed is the engineer's certification for payment isn't signed. Page 1 of the application, it's like the 3rd one down in the file, but they didn't sign off on it.
Hang on a second. Isn't it signed by Ryan Miller? Oh, it's signed by Ryan Miller, and it's, where's their signature? Engineers, yeah, it's not signed, so we have to get this signed before we can approve it. Can we approve this, Mr. Meyer, contingent upon the engineer's signature?
Yeah, the first page of the document is a payment recommendation number 4 by the engineer. So I'm not sure why Ryan McLaughlin didn't sign the actual certificate, but we do have a signed recommendation by him that it be paid. But he does need to sign the certificate.
I guess I would make the motion to approve it, but contingent that Ryan signs it.
Could we have a second?
I will second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. No opposed.
All right, thank you. Takes care of the Southgate. Oh, no, we also have a request from Haas and Associates for their engineering work on this project, construction oversight, in a total amount of $6,116.20, and they have a very detailed breakdown of everything that they've been doing. And Jeff might ask if they've been out there every day, and it looks like they've almost been out there, I don't know about every day, but a lot of days.
Could we have a motion?
I would like to make a motion to pay request in the amount for Haas and Associates in the amount of $6,116.20.
All in favor? Second, I'm sorry.
Just a second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, then the North End study, the current status is they began developing the hydraulic and hydrologic model for the storm sewer system. Delineation of the drainage areas within the project area is about 85% complete, and creation of the hydraulic model for the storm sewer network is approximately 35% complete. The next steps are to finish the creation of the hydraulic and hydrologic model for the storm work, begin the capacity analysis, engage a subcontractor for services necessary to complete the modeling, and then complete the study report. This has been going on for quite a while. I don't remember, Mr. Meyer, when did we start this North End study? Do you remember?
I think it was the middle of last year.
Okay, well, we're about to, we're officially to the middle of this year, are we not? So,
I think so.
okay, hopefully we can wrap that one up. Any questions about the North End study? Okay, Long Beach Sewer Project, or Long Beach Sewer Preliminary Engineering Report Project. The SRF section, which stands for State Revolving Fund section of IDEM, has reviewed and approved all the responses to their PER review comments. They asked for 3 bound copies of the report. 5 bound copies were delivered to the sanitary district. I signed those and sent those to the IDEM as per the instructions. The following exhibits will need to be submitted to the SRF section later when they're completed. That's the local government agreement between the sanitary district and the town of Trail Creek, the town of Long Beach. And the authorized representative resolution by the Michigan City Sanitary District, and then the PER acceptance by the Sanitary District and the town of Long Beach. Public hearing for the PER will be advertised, conducted, and transcript of the hearing will be submitted to the SRF section after it's completed. We were talking about having that maybe through a Zoom meeting. I know there's a lot of pushback on that because there seems to be a lot of anticipation of significant comments by members of the town of Long Beach. That was also a point of discussion. The public hearing is technically is more of a hearing. You're allowed to make comments, but there doesn't necessarily need to be any response back. So we talked about all that too, but we haven't set a date or a time for the public hearing yet, and I'll let you folks know when we do. Any questions on Long Beach? Okay, hearing none. The next thing on the agenda is the White Ditch Clearing Project. We received the quotes for the White Ditch dredging and clearing, skim cleaning and clearing. We received 3 quotes. D&M Excavating was $178,303. Woodruff and Sons was $189,805. And HRP Construction was $182,000 even, so they were really close. We also sent requested quotes to GE Marshall. They refused to, or not refused, they declined to quote. We probably do not have enough money in our budget, stormwater budget, to do this work. I don't really see how. I also think that there may be potentially some confusion about what we expected for this project. There's obviously 2 sides to this White Ditch. One of the sides has a considerable amount more of trees and so forth, almost forested along the bank. And then I think that's the east side, then the west side does. So we want to get with the contractor, in this case the low quoted contractor, which is D&M Excavating, and make sure that we're all on the same page about what their quote was. But at this point, I cannot recommend moving forward with this project because I do not believe we have $178,000 in our stormwater budget to move forward with this project. So I'll come to the board meeting with an update, next board meeting with an update and potentially a recommendation on this White Ditch. Is there any questions on White Ditch?
How long are the quotes good for?
Steve might know. 60 days, Steve?
Yeah, I believe that's right.
Okay.
Hey, Mike, where is G&E Marshall from?
Valparaiso.
Oh, okay.
They stopped in here, I don't know, back in maybe before COVID-19, I remember that, so maybe February-ish or so, and they were saying, hey, we'd really like to, get a chance to do some work over in Michigan City, so we threw them into the mix, and they didn't respond. The next item that we have is the Strebo Pond vegetation, professional service for vegetation restoration and maintenance at Strebo Pond. We had 4 quotes. We sent this out to 4 companies. The first company that responded was Williams Creek with the base bid of $103,310. And alternative number 1, invasive woody species removal, $12,830. And then alternative number 2, furnish install wetland plugs, was another $103,690. So their total amount for all 3 of those was well over, $215,000 or so. Applied Ecological Services, their base bid was $52,331, with an alternative number 1 of $9,961 and alternative 2 of $73,676. Fox Contractors and Earth Source Incorporated declined to quote. We believe that this is something that we need to do, and Steve Stanford has some other comments that he put down there. Below that, he goes on to say his recommendations, considering both proposers appear to be well qualified, but that Applied Ecological Services proposed fees for the base bid and alternatives are substantially lower. It is my recommendation that the project be awarded to Applied Ecological Services to the extent that the district has resources available. The award should begin with the base bid and alternative 1 afterwards, and then we could check on the need for alternative 2. This project is, This project is something that, we probably need to make a decision on a little quicker. Steve, do you remember if we could wait till the July board meeting, or if they started in August with this work, would that be okay?
I believe it would be.
Okay, so I think we will look at this a little more closely in our finances and come back to the July board meeting with a recommendation of whether or not we feel we have at $52,000 in our stormwater budget to at least move forward with the base bid. The reason I say that is they needed to do some work in the summertime on the invasive species. I thought we were going to try to get started in July, but maybe if we get started in August, it'll still be okay. Any questions about that?
Michael.
Yes, sir.
Hey, Michael, this is Scott.
Yes, sir.
And maybe a question for you and Stephen, so we can tell the board. Is there a way we could do the base bid and possibly alternative 1 this year and alternative 2 next year? Because that way we're getting started on the 2021 budget, and then I think stormwater would be okay.
I have to go back and look at that proposal, but I don't believe alternative 2 would even be done until next year for sure, because that's after you kill off all the unwanted stuff, then you come back and do the plugging. And alternative 1 may also be, I think alternative 1 might also be more in the winter time. Maybe even we could wait for alternative 1 till next year too. I think really the only thing we need to really concern ourselves with right now is the base bid.
Okay. And I think we'd be okay that way. So I can include the others next year. All right.
Are there issues of having the contractor do the base bid and then have to come back a couple of months later, like for a second remobilization? Would that be covered in that quote, or is it covered only under remobilization to do the whole project?
It's covered in the quote, Jeff, because the work it's actually spelled out like that it needs to be done later on. So the way I understand it is, the first thing we want to do is herbicide all of the that Phragmites that's growing out there now, okay? And then after it dies off, then that's the alternative number one, and get rid of that stuff. So it's actually after the fact, you can't do it all at once, so there would not be any additional costs if, to remobilize for the alternative one or alternative two.
Understood.
I mean, that would be the only difference between what I'm trying to talk about now would be, we could ask the board for approval to move forward with the base bid now, pending a review of finances by myself and Stanford and Mr. Kistler and our attorney, Jim Meyer. Steve, do you think that's necessary, or do you think we could just wait till the next board meeting?
I think I'd really like to go a little forward with the base bid if we think it's appropriate to do so.
Well, we could ask, so then could we ask for board approval then, contingent upon our review of the finances by myself and Steve Stanford and Scott Kistler and Jim Meyer?
So where's Scott at on this? Is there money on that line item? Is there $55,000 on the line item to do?
Yes, currently we have that. No, that's assuming there's no like stormwater major repair, that needs to be done. And even then, we probably could do a major repair yet on that line item of say 50, 60,000. I'd have to go back and look at the performance report, but currently I believe that money is there, so. And available.
If something like 55 available to do this case here, and then if something goes south somewhere, there's a little reserve to do some kind of a repair, something like 50,000, is that what I heard?
Yes. Okay. Yeah.
Well, if you're going to approve it, I would still like it, I mean, we could always not move forward, but I would like the approval to be based on a little more thorough review, because, yeah, their money might be in there for that, but we might need to look at some of the other things that we need to do too before we would be willing to move forward.
All right, well, Steve, Mike, if we can wait until the next board meeting, if it's not a rush and you don't think so, well,
I think what would be the best is if we could get approval to move forward with the contract, pending financial review by myself, Mr. Stanford, Mr. Kistler, and Mr. Meyer. I think that would be the way to go, because it would be good to get moving on this in July if we can afford it.
All right, let's get a motion then. Did we get a motion?
Or we could just come back in July with the recommendation.
This is Jeff still thinking about the motion.
Well, Mike, can I ask you to just come back, because I think there's enough, pause here with commissioners to wait till the July meeting.
I think that would be with finances the way they are, I think that would really be the best. I know we would like to get started on this in July, but, our board meeting is like July 23rd, and if we approve it somewhere in that range, or maybe it's the 22nd, 22nd. So if we get it approved at the next board meeting, and, we could get the contractor going hopefully right away, so I think we'll be okay.
Maybe, Mike, if we could, Scott, could you just take a look at the line item and make sure that there's enough money in there for it?
Just so the board knows, I just looked at it's in the budget performance report for stormwater that I gave you earlier. And we have a line item called repair, maintenance, sewer, drains, which I was looking to use. It's budgeted for $200,000, and we haven't spent any of that yet. Just so the board knows.
I don't see that, Scott. This is Rusty. Maybe I was looking at the wrong one.
Stormwater on page 2, kind of towards the bottom.
Repairs and maintenance, maintenance, sewers and drains, $200,000. Okay, yeah, I see that.
Right.
Yep. Okay.
So, and we haven't spent any of it yet. I know we had some things we were looking at,
maybe a couple board meetings ago. Like, I don't know if there was one that was being considered, but we haven't moved forward on anything or asked for approval on anything yet. So, I think we have more than enough to handle this. I still think we need to review it, but let's forward to the next meeting. Yeah.
I think that would be the best. That'd give us a chance to write a memo about it and so forth, okay?
All
I
right.
guess Jeff will make a motion to continue this one to the next meeting.
All right.
Okay, so now I'm moving on to the energy savings project. Our energy savings for the month of June were $2,479 based on our new rate. We would have paid extra had we not had the energy savings that we have in place. And I don't know if there's any other questions on the rest of the report. Our capacitor, our our power factor was again 99.96 and 99.90 in the off-peak, so we're doing super fantastic there and saving money with that power factor every day. Ryan Byers put this report together. I want to thank him for doing that. He's done a really nice job of keeping up on this after I used to do it. So are there any questions on the actual energy savings report? Okay, I want to say that we're still working with ESG on the guaranteed savings. We sent them another letter around the May 21st, I think sticks in my mind. We'd asked for a response within a week. By the 26th of May, they wrote us a response back saying, or a note back saying that the person that needs to work on this is out of the office, and they'd have a response to us by June 12th. That person got back to the office, and a couple emails later, now they're saying they'll respond to us by July 2nd. So we're still looking at a substantial difference, and we're still working, trying to get this resolved without having to do a lawsuit or without having to go through mediation. So we'll continue to update you at the board meetings, and if we have something to present to you, we will do that in short order. Are there any other questions about the energy savings project? The blue swag report is in your packet. I really didn't want to go through every page of the blue swag report, but again, I'd like to compliment Mr. Stanford and Johnny Gorsica and Arbor, Hema, and Ryan Byers, and also Anthony Basil. They've done a lot of work on identifying these stormwater issues and putting together some very nice information. So there's a lot here. There's a lot going on stormwater issues, and I hope that you guys find the report useful to summarize what's happening. Any questions?
Mike, and then, go ahead, sorry. That wasn't me. Michael, I just want to thank you guys and your team for putting this together, because it's a great overview of all the projects and the different issues that are happening with them. And so, I looked at the residential flooding report and found that very interesting this time around, so thank you.
You're very welcome, and we really like doing it, and we haven't had an actual meeting for a while because of COVID-19, but maybe we might have one in July. We'll see how things go. The next thing I had on the agenda was just an update on the PLC Scada upgrade. We got some approvals from you at the last board meeting. The DMC, which stands for Dynamic Motion Control contract, has been fully executed, and the Wonderware upgrades along with the Microsoft stuff that we needed for that, POs have been issued, and I actually believe a couple pieces or a couple of the licenses, it's not really anything tangible. The licenses have actually came to us. And we're starting to use that. DMC has engaged us with a questionnaire or two. The first one I filled out all the answers to and sent back to them, and then they sent another questionnaire that really Andy Metanek is probably going to have to answer because it has to deal with the servers and access to the servers and virtual different things like that. So he's working on a response back to them, but we are moving on this, and I've been calling and talking to people almost every day about this because I don't want this to fall off the wayside and be another year or two before we get this done. So just wanted to let you know that so far it's been pretty good progress on that. Any questions about that work? Okay, the next thing then was the reports, the monthly reports from staff. They're all there. Again, another bunch of work, as you can tell by if you read all these reports done by the sanitary district. Very commendable jobs and a lot happening, a lot going on. Are you going to criticize any kind of typos or wording in the operations report by Mr. Stanford, Mr. Redinger, or are you letting it go?
No, but I will make a comment. So, with regards to, the quantity, the quality, the content, the amount, everything that could be said about those reports, you would think, and I was wondering, not worried, but wondering that with COVID and with some of the at-home working and, how this was all going to pan out in the form of, the amount of work that was going to end up on these reports. And what was really impressive that there's not been a slip of quality, quantity, and communication on behalf of all these reports. And my hat's off to the extra meetings that I know Mr. Cusson, Mr. Stanford had with engineering weekly, getting the policy and procedure working at home really early, Michael, like you and your staff did. I think really opened up something that just hasn't been opened before. And with regards to shortening up more compliments, it's just very impressive that the reports of the last 2 months just mirroring them, the quality and quantity of communication and the things that are going on are just so informative. So thank you very, very much.
Good job.
No, I'll pass that along to all the staff, and I agree with you 100%. We've certainly done. I don't think there's been any shortage of work. I don't think there's been any downslide in the amount of work that we've gotten done. If anything, it seems like it's been more, and I think the staff have done a really nice job of keeping up with the communication, and I do agree. It's very, very good, and I appreciate your compliments very much.
So even in addition to, the communication and the reports, this is Jeff, and the last 40 days, 45 days or so, I piled on a ton of work.
You did, yes you did.
Having those guys do the televising for the sanitary sewer, and I'll weigh in and just call out, Tony specifically for helping me get that and setting up the program, helping me set that program up to get that work done. That goes to not so much the sanitary side of things, but it does go to Michigan City, and it went a long way to helping us put together a program for construction next year. So, tip of the hat to the guys that did the televising, and a tip of the hat to Tony for helping me do that program. So.
Hey Jeff, I would just add that I believe the video inspections got completed yesterday for the whole project.
Yeah, I got a whole list of this needs work, this needs replaced, and this is clear to resurface, that kind of stuff. So yeah, very, very complimentary and appreciative of all the work that was done to make that happen.
Awesome.
Thank you, Jeff, for the kind compliments, and I'll pass that along to the staff also.
And Mr. Myers?
Well, I was going to read the...
Look, do you want to do the refuse report, Michael?
Yes, I was just going to do that. So in May, we had a total compact of 1,176 tons. we had a loose total of 20 tons, and grits and screenings, we had a total of 148 tons of grits and screenings taken out. One thing about the grits and screenings that also may include street sweepings too. I think we have two separate permits that allow us to take grits and screenings, and a different one for the street sweepings, but I think Destiny's just putting them both together. But I want to just say the grits and screenings, as I may have said at some previous meetings, for about 20 years before I got here in 2012, the sanitary just never disposed of any grits and screenings. They just were piling them in the old, one of the old sludge lagoons that we have, and we're trying to get that emptied. So sometimes you see a little more of that and you think, wow, where's all that coming from? Well, that's because we're taking that out of there and trying to get that back the way it should be. And then if you look at the totals on the second page for the loose and the totals for the compacts, you can tell that, we're pretty much pretty close to where we've been. Bigger than 18 for sure on the compacts, but I don't know how accurate these totals are between the loose and the compact. Maybe you need to kind of look at the total a little more, but looking at 19 and 20 together, they look to be pretty similar, so just wanted to point that out. Any questions about the refuse report?
No, sir.
That's all I have.
All right, Mr. Myers?
Yeah, as noted on the agenda, I was just going to mention something about the Long Beach Incorporation. Under the laws in the state of Indiana, one municipality can request that it be incorporated into the sanitary district of another adjacent municipality. Incorporation is not annexation. It's merely a sanitary district expansion. And the requirement for doing so, though, requires that, in this case, Long Beach Council submit to the board a written resolution requesting that it be incorporated into the sanitary district. And they're working on it. They haven't produced one yet. And, that's what we're waiting for, assuming we get one, which I believe will be the case because we really can't move ahead with the project without it. This board would then announce at a public meeting that it had received the request from Long Beach to be incorporated into the sanitary district. There would be an announcement of a public hearing to be held, and then after the public hearing, the board would vote and pass a resolution regarding assuming you voted in favor of incorporating it into the district, and then that would form also the basis for the written agreement between the town and the district for this sewer project. I would anticipate for sure having that resolution from Long Beach by the next board meeting.
Okay.
If there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
No.
And then that's it. Other than, like I said, if anybody has any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
I don't have any questions. It just sounds like we're in a holding pattern. Is that right? Just waiting on Long Beach?
Correct.
Right.
Okay.
Well, is that it? That's all you have, Mr. Myers?
Yes.
Okay.
Gary,
Yes.
before you go on to the approval of tax levy claims, when we started talking about the Long Beach, I was thinking about two other sewer projects, and I realized they're on the agenda, items 12I and 12J. I missed them. Can I go back to those, please, and just talk about those?
Sure, Mike. Go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead, Mike.
On the 300 North and US Highway 21 sewer project, I talked to you before about how I had met with Mayor Perry, and he was gave us our approval to accept the flow from that and incorporate that into the sanitary district if they would like to, just as Mr. Meyer is talking here about incorporation in. we are looking at potentially getting a commerce grant, or the county is looking at potentially getting a commerce grant to install these sewers, and we're not planning on offering any financial support for this, but we will take over ownership of the sewers and operation of the sewers after they're installed. I don't know, they said that they had received some positive news about the grant, but then that was the last I heard of that. I heard that about 3 weeks ago. So, did you have anything else, any other news on that, Mr. Meyer?
No.
Okay. And then item J.
Party in the conference.
Item J, we talked about the, let me try to turn this music down on this other public one. Something must have happened. Item J is the Pine Tree Court. We talked about the need for the easement on the woodland from Mr. Pritz, and he helped pay for the design of that project, and we've got that worked out now with Mr. Pritz's agreement. So the sanitary district is going to pay for the sewer to go underneath US Highway 20, which I think is a good idea for everyone involved, and allow us to serve a larger area, parts of which are in Michigan City, parts of which are in Trail Creek. I talked to Mr. Doyle yesterday about putting together a proposal for us, since he did design work on putting the bid packet together and construction, engineering, and so forth. So hopefully I'll have that ready for the next board meeting. That's all I have there, Gary.
All right.
So now we're on the tax levy claims, revenue and tax levy claims.
Okay. I'd like to add on that Pine Tree Court sewer extension, though, Mike. We're going to go forward with that.
Yes, I believe so. It looks promising right now.
Okay. All right. I'd like to approve and allow revenues and tax levy claims for payment.
I will make that motion.
Second? Yes. All in favor?
Aye.
Could I get a motion to adjourn?
I'll make the motion to adjourn. Tim Smith.
Can I get a second? Can we get a second motion to adjourn?
Oh, well, Jeff will second that for sure.
All in favor?
Aye.
The next board meeting will be July the 22nd, 2020.
And before you guys hang up, I would hope that we could have that meeting in person. Probably reach out to each one of the board members about doing that. I think if we can wear some face masks and or try to sit a little further apart from each other, I think we could possibly do that. Reach out to Mr. President Mitchell and maybe a couple of other board members, all of you, to see what you think about that. Okay?
All righty. You guys have a beautiful day.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President.